Hello, YouTube family. This is Chris Simi, and I have the disease of sex and love addiction. It's actually the second time I'm making this video. After listening to the first one, I felt like I was kind of all over the place. I didn't really get straight to the point. The reason for doing this video is I see a lot of people posting online and in meetings talking about, how do I know I'm a sex addict? What if it's that I just really like sex? And what if I just not any good at relationships? And what if I'm just an asshole and just cheat? And first I want to say that is all very possible. But the reason for this video is to tell you why I'm a sex and love addict. I always tell newcomers, you probably heard this in other videos, but I always tell newcomers, just because I like sex, just because I have multiple partners at one time, just because I was a bad husband in my marriage and I had affair upon affair upon affair, and just because I didn't know how to be alone, does not make me a sex and love addict. What makes me a sex and love addict is that I do these things, they destroy my life, and I do them anyway. That's what makes me the sex and love addict. It's the unmanageability, it's the destructive nature that I would go about doing these things. My whole life was falling apart, spiraling out of control, and I couldn't stop. That's what makes me the sex and love addict. So other ways of how do I know I'm a sex and love addict? I believe this started when I was a kid, a long time ago, when I was first introduced to sex at 5. But I really think it started taking hold at 10 and 11, where I made pornography a focal point of my life at such an early age, to the point where I was able to get easy access to magazines that my grandfather had stowed away, to the point where internet was coming aboard, and I was able to have easy access that way. That I would spend a lot of time and a lot of effort getting online, a dial-up connection at that, printing off image after image after image after image, and I'm talking probably in the thousands, and that's not an exaggeration, because what I would do is I would take those images, I would take them in my room, I would get a hole puncher, and I would have my parents, keep in mind, this is all my parents' stuff, okay? That I would have them buy more printer paper, or that I would have them go buy binders for me, and I would spend every spare time that I had either watching, looking at it, or making booklets. And I'm talking about 10, 15, 20 different booklets of 100 pages each, easily. And again, not an exaggeration. I actually wish it was an exaggeration. But my unmanageability started then. Another problem is that it was never addressed by anybody. My family saw that I was doing this, but it was the whole back to boys will be boys, and they just left it alone. They left it alone. At this point in my life, I was getting caught masturbating a lot by my parents and my sisters, and it was never talked about. It was like, boys will be boys. Then as I got older and my teenage years, and I started dating, I was a serial dater. I couldn't be alone. I had no idea that it went back to early rejection and early abandonment in my childhood, which I will get to in a totally different video. But even then, I would, now as I got older in my teenage years, I got high-speed internet, and I was able to watch it more and more. Then I started making my own money a little bit, and I would take that money and I would spend it on porn websites. Or I would get somebody to go buy me pornography at the store that was of age. And when I was 18, I spent a lot of my time at the porn store. A lot of time. I spent all my extra money at the porn store. I had a collection that would probably make most porn stars blush. But nobody told me otherwise. I remember very vividly, as if it was yesterday, there was a girl that I was dating, keep in mind, who is actually a best friend of my ex-girlfriend. I had cheated on my ex-girlfriend with this girl, so I was already showing signs of that, and again, never suffered any consequences. Nobody ever sat down and talked to me like, hey, maybe that's not good behavior. This all really went unnoticed, or I won't say unnoticed, just went unaddressed. Anyway, she came over to my house. I was 19, 20 at the time, and I had pornography up on my computer screen as if I was watching a Disney movie. And I had no idea why she was upset. I had no idea why she freaked out. To me, it was normal. Why would she care? And I totally had disregard for anybody's feelings or what they said. And if they had a problem with it, it was their fault. It was their misunderstanding. And it's not my problem that they couldn't have the sex drive that I did. Now, I'm a sex addict in recovery, and I still have a high sex drive to this day. But the difference is I can use that sex drive in a healthy way and not in a destructive way. It is very possible. But those are early signs of, like, I knew if it was introduced to me at that point, I could easily say, yeah, I had a problem. But again, no consequences. I didn't have to answer for any of my actions, and it seemed like it was okay and normal, to the point where a lot of my friends thought it was cool. They thought it was weird that I would have such a big collection of pornography, but I had a library for people to come to. I was almost like the go-to guy. I was a drug dealer in the sense of pornography. This bled over into college. I actually didn't even lose my virginity until I was 22 years old. I had this moral code, and that's the other thing I'd like to talk about. This moral code that I've always had. I never felt good about the things that I did. But since nobody told me it was wrong, I thought it was okay. But my moral code said not to cheat. It said not to have sex until marriage. I really wanted those things for myself. My moral code was like, don't get caught masturbating. Although I couldn't stop getting caught masturbating because I wouldn't just do it in the privacy of my room. I would do it in public places at a very early age. But like, that wasn't my moral compass. I was going against my moral fiber. And I think that's another thing about how do I know I'm a sex addict. Do I go against my moral fiber and do it anyway? Okay? But once I got the taste for sex, I couldn't stop. At that point, I had multiple partners in a week. And again, being in college, being a guy in college, being in a fraternity, being a guy in college, that was cool. It's a terrible stigma that if women do it, they're a slut. If a guy does it, they're a badass. I think it's bullshit. And I think it's a really twist, a real nasty twist in what society and how society labels things. Sex addiction is one of those things like, how could this, I hear this all the time. Is sex addiction real? A lot of people don't believe in it because sex is such an important part of the human element. How can sex be addicting? Well, go talk to somebody who's in recovery. Go let them share with you how it almost destroyed their lives. And in my case, I tried unsuccessfully, thank God, to take my own life because I could not stop what I was doing. I was in a strange place with strange people doing strange things. October 31st of 2014. That 2-year anniversary is coming up for me. I've been in recovery. I've been in the room since April 2014. I didn't finally realize I had a problem until then. At that point, I had gotten married. At that point, before I was even married, I met a woman that was a co-addict and a codependent that wanted me around no matter what, that she was against pornography, but would entertain it because I was into it, to the point where I would get on my work computer, watch pornography at work, and she would watch it with me on the other end. And she didn't want to, but she thought that that's what was going to make me happy. I started missing work. I started actually taking my work laptop and getting in a car and driving into a secluded area so I can watch pornography and masturbate for 3 to 4 hours a day during work. If that's not unmanageable, I don't know what is. The fact that I didn't lose my job is, that just goes to show there was a higher power at work beyond me. But that wasn't enough. I'm a straight male. But because I was such a young kid, I was introduced and I was sexually abused by an older man. And I didn't realize until I got into treatment that I started acting out with men to reenact that drama and reenact that trauma in my life. And actually, when I got to a very, very low point of my life in this addiction, I would start acting out with men because I hated myself so much. And it took me back to when I was 9. So then that all happened right before I got married. And then I started lying to my now ex-wife a lot, all the time. I was getting on Craigslist all the time. I was actually now starting to buy prostitutes. I was actually buying transsexual prostitutes as well. Again, I don't identify with being a gay or bi-curious male. I consider myself a straight male that was doing these things. I was very confused by them. I have a lot of light has been shedded on that for me now, which I'm grateful for. But I was starting to do all these things, and I was hating myself more and more and more. But I couldn't tell anybody, because if I told anybody, then they were gonna leave me, and they were gonna run from me, and they were gonna think I was some type of freak. So I was in this dilemma. I didn't want this secret, but I couldn't tell anybody. And since I couldn't tell anybody, it was more and more and more. So in return, I started doing it more. I started lying more. I started stealing money from people. I started stealing money from a joint account that me and my ex-wife had. I started stealing money from another entity that I won't go into detail on that now, to buy prostitutes. I would spend hours upon hours upon hours in adult bookstores, cruising. And if you don't know what cruising is, I suggest that you Google that. My life was completely unmanageable. My whole world was crumbling down, and I couldn't stop. When I finally did get caught on January 12th of 2014, after I was totally in an unmanageable state, that I had so many different email accounts. I had 3 or 4 at that time, all going by Chris Hemming, and that's why you hear me talk about Chris Hemming in this, because that's who I identified with in my addiction. That to the point where I had left one of my email accounts open on my ex-wife's iPad, her very own iPad. I was totally lost. I didn't care who I was hurting. I didn't care that I was hurting myself. Well, she spent an entire day, a Sunday, reading these emails. An entire day. And I wasn't there for that, obviously. I was out doing what God knows what I was doing, because at this point I was a horrible husband. I was. But I also know now I was the best husband that I knew how to be, which wasn't a very good one. And I remember I just got out of a movie with a friend, and the first thing I did is check my phone for my emails, because at this point I was having multiple hookups in a week with different people. Okay, I was having unprotected sex with different people, couples, males, and transgender. And I would get on my phone to check my emails to see if I got any new ones. And I noticed that I had emails that were read that I didn't read, and I knew at that point I was caught. The gig was up. I went home, I was confronted, and somehow I was able to twist that around. I got her to keep me from leaving. I don't know how that worked. It just goes to show that water seeks its own level. And at some point she was just as sick as I was, because a healthy individual would have left at that point. Actually, a healthy individual would never got in a relationship with me in the first place. Now, there's a lot more to that than what I'm saying. There's a lot more that goes to that, and I'll do that in another video. She gave me 1 week. She gave me 1 week to get help. I didn't get into the rooms until April. So you can kind of see that the first time somebody tried to hold me to the fire, they couldn't hold me to the fire, and I wasn't going to let them. I was still going to do my own thing. What I did, and what I was really good at, was manipulating people to make them think, or get them to the point where they would just leave me alone. And that's where I got. In February, and this is how I realized I needed help, I was doing all this stuff. At this point, I probably had 150 plus, close to 200 different partners just in my marriage. And for some reason, I didn't think I had a problem. Thank God I didn't catch anything. I don't know how. I didn't catch anything. But even then, it wasn't enough. Come February of that year, I was at a work conference in Dallas, and I met a young lady from Michigan who was also, she was a newlywed. She was newly married, young, early 20s, beautiful girl. And we sparked a romantic relationship through long distance. It was an emotional one. And she would talk about how she was unhappy in her marriage. I would talk about how I was unhappy in mine. And to the point where we talked about leaving each other's spouses for each other. We started Skyping often, texting, phone calls, sexting, picture swapping, the whole 9 yards. And this went on for a couple of months. And finally, I went up there in April 2014 to see her. Now, my ex-wife, again, we weren't separated. Again, she just didn't want to believe it, right? She wanted so bad to not think that the man she married was doing all this shit. So she bought into the lies too, just like I bought into my own lies. And what happens is she knew I'd met a couple of females at this work conference that happened to live up in Michigan. And when she found out that I was going to go up to Michigan to go see the University of Michigan campus and see some of the coaches up there, because I'm really big into coaching, again, part of my backstory, she's like, "You're not going to see those girls, are you?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to be in Ann Arbor. They live in Grand Rapids." So I went up there and I did exactly what I said I was going to do. But I also lied, right? I lied again, and they end up coming and meeting me in Ann Arbor, and then I end up going to Grand Rapids the next day to hang out with this young individual and her husband, who's a cop. I mean, this wasn't the first time that I had an affair with a married woman. Twice before, I'd actually had two husbands confront me. You would think that I would stop at that point, thought I had a problem. Nah, I didn't stop. I kept going on and doing it. I just moved on to the next one. So here we are. I'm hanging out with this young married woman in Michigan, across the country at this point, and I'm hanging out with her and her husband, who's a cop. We have a great time. I make friends with her husband, no big deal. The next morning she comes over to my hotel, we have sex, like it was nothing. But here was the problem. Here's what hit me straight in the face. Every woman before that I had an affair with, every male I had an affair with, every transgender I had an affair with, to me they were just sex, it was just physical. I just made the excuse that I had a wife that was misunderstanding and didn't have the sex drive that I did. But here was a woman that I thought I had fallen for and I was ready to start a new life with. Once we had sex, all those feelings I thought I had for her were completely gone, as if they were never there. And that scared the living shit out of me. I had to drive from Grand Rapids to Ann Arbor, about a 2-hour drive, and that whole time I was shivering, thinking, oh fuck, I have really screwed up. And again, still wasn't thinking about anybody else. Wasn't thinking about what I could potentially be doing to my ex-wife, or what I could potentially be doing to my family. I wasn't even thinking about what I could potentially be doing to myself when it comes to harm. I just realized I had a problem at that point. That this problem had now taken me clear across country. I had stopped working after this. I had fallen into deep depressions after this. All hell really broke loose. And the difference is I saw it. And so that very next Tuesday when I got back from Michigan, I found myself in my very first meeting. It was the scariest thing in my life. But it was the right step in the right direction that I needed at the time. And I realize now that I needed all those experiences so I can come back and share with you. So hopefully that this video can do somebody some service and you don't have to get to the point that I was. I had to experience all that stuff for me to get to a place that I can accept that I'm a sex and love addict. And then that's okay, that I can get help and I can still live a happy and normal life. I am such a happy person today. But also that I can share my experience with somebody else and hope that touches them in some way and that helps them in their journey as well. So anyway, thanks for this 18 minutes that you sat down and listened to this. If you have, please hit the like button if you liked it. Please leave in the comments down below. Please subscribe. It helps subscribing and liking. It gets it out there, this video out there to more people so they can see it because I want to reach as many people as I can. And please, if you have any questions or an idea of a video that I could do, please leave that underneath. I would love to hear from you. Again, thanks for stopping by and have a great night.